We have a question for Chris DeFonzo. Chris, you still on?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. It's coming from Bruce. What will the late season cold do to the early season insects?
Well, a lot of our bigger pests haven't arrived yet, right? So black cutworm and armyworm are still kind of floating in. Potato leafhopper isn't here yet. Most of our other insects are just sitting there in the soil, so I don't think they're affected at all. What Western bean cutworm, European corn borer, they're either in their prepupal stage or their last larval stage. And they've already, I mean, they're pretty protected. I've dug around in some tree lines and I found like bean leaf beetle and things like that, but they can get down. I mean, they're adults. They can get down under the leaf residue, and if it gets a little cold, they'll just sit there for a while. So they're in more of a sheltered spot. They're not out in the open like a corn plant is, sitting on the top of a hill or something like that, or in a low area. So there's not many insects out. There's a few moths I've seen, but they're pretty cold tolerant. So my colleague is on from Texas, where it's like 100 degrees or something. I don't know if he wants to say anything.
We did have another question come in, actually, if you don't mind holding, colleague from Texas. What about alfalfa seedlings? Is Kim on, or I don't think I saw her name anywhere.
That would be perfect for
I didn't see Kim on. Phil might be able to answer that.
Well, I'm going to say that if they've emerged, there's certainly a chance that they're going to freeze off and be killed. So if they've not emerged yet, then I would say you've got a pretty good chance of holding and not losing those. But they are so tender, they're so wimpy coming up that I'm not real confident that you're going to see those alfalfa seedlings make it if it really, really gets cold and those soil temperatures drop. How many degrees? More than 10 degrees?
I'm thinking 5 to 10 would be and that's a guess on,
Right.
but it's an unusual situation. But I agree. The seedlings are typically much more sensitive than later developed or more developed.
If they're under the ground, even if they're 35 to 40 degrees, they're not going to freeze. But if they're above the ground, I think they're toast.
Well, I cut off the colleague from Texas, so I'm sorry, Chris, if you want to go ahead and...
Oh, he's still
good.
here.
I'm sorry, Pat.
This has been really informative. The material is fantastic, and the way you're doing it is really good. So I may talk to Chris about us copying your methods here. Now we're hot and we're going into drought, and that's pretty normal for here. Cotton's being planted right now. That's it.
Pat's my co-author on the trade table, so that's when I put the trade table out, he gives me the southern perspective on that, and then he posts it on that website along with the new table for sweet corn. So anyway, he's hot and we're cold. So
thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Pat.
So Dennis, is there a lot of herbicide need to go out on this wheat yet?
I'm not sure. I think most of it is pretty well applied. We've got all of our stuff done. There's some that was late. And I saw a field over on the west side of the state yesterday that had annual bluegrass really, really bad. I thought we had it bad here at Mason, but and I've been in a couple fields that don't look like they even applied any herbicide, but it's getting to the point now where we're at that feet 6 to 8 almost. And so the wheat's really elongating, and it's kind of snuffing out the weeds that are below it.
We don't have a lot of herbicide applications on our wheat yet. It's just not been, we've been wet. And
well, we fought the cold weather, because when you apply in the cold weather conditions, you can do some damage, phytotoxicity. And so, yeah, it's been a challenge to find a warm day that's not windy.
Yeah. And
I've had
for the next several days too.
Dennis, I've had some guys tell me that they've probably lost 10 to 15 bushel already with cold temperatures. That was the cold stuff 2 weeks ago. What is this going to do to those yields now? And what about oats that's planted and up and growing? What's going to happen to those crops? Any idea?
Well, I think for the small grains, the spring cereals that would be planted, I think we're probably still okay because the growing point is at the soil surface or even below the soil surface. So unless we get that frozen crust, you know, in the further north climates or latitudes like Jeff mentioned, I think we'll be okay with those. But in terms of wheat, you know, that developing head is located right at the top of the uppermost node. And so depending on where that uppermost node is, and I've seen it as high as 6 inches off the soil surface in some early planted wheat. And so if it gets well below freezing at that elevation or at that level above the soil surface or near the soil surface, we're going to have some damage on wheat. Normally we don't have frost damage on wheat like what they do in Kansas and in Oklahoma, just because frost is usually done here by the time our wheat starts to elongate.
So Bill Stengel asked a question about alfalfa. And Bill, if you find that alfalfa is killed, would you let me know? I would certainly like to know what temperatures you get in your area. I'm not sure where you're from, but it'd be nice to know just how they turn out. So let us know. Send us an email, whatever works.
Bill, can I ask one question before you go? And
Yeah,
it's kind of a Phil, more of a Kirk question. I've got a couple of questions that people about fertilizing these grass hay fields, whether or not you should add some sulfur to that that application if it's predominantly grass and it's more of an N application. Should some sulfur go on with that?
Is Kurt still on?
Yeah, I'm still here. You know, I wouldn't look at the soil S test if you do have one. You know, that's kind of a misnomer. It's not very reliable unless it comes back extremely high, then we know it's not needed. You know, it has been used in the past. It's pretty cost-effective nutrient because we don't need it in high quantities.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it probably wouldn't hurt. It's surprising when I look at, you know, on some of our corn acres where we don't use sulfur. Do we see a little bit of a color differential? Absolutely. So again, it's something that you probably don't have to do every year.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't looked at it much on grass or hay mixtures. You know, on the turf side, we see it occasionally. We see a little bit of a response. So a lot of times it ends up being just a color response, not necessarily impacting biomass. So again, I would probably trial it out.
10 to 15 pounds?
Pardon?
10 to 15 pounds?
Yeah, I would go with that range. You know, if you want to go a little higher, that's okay. If you're looking at different S sources, so if you want to try a couple different S sources through a field, then probably you want to be a little leaner towards that 10 to 15 pound range. If you want to look at something like AS versus gypsum versus, you know, thiosulfate or something. If you're just looking at one source, I'd probably up that by about 5 or 10 pounds. And that's all. And see how it looks and see if you do get a little bit more biomass production this year. You know, and it's going to be hit and miss. You know, remember sulfates and anions, so it's going to move. So if you end up trialing something out and we end up with one of these wet spring periods where we get 8 inches of rain in June, you might move a little bit of that S, right? And if we end up one of these periods where June's an inch of rain or less, then it's not going to move, but at the same time, you might not uptake it. So again, that's one of the problem with these anecdotal observations. If you only do something once, it's really dependent on those environmental conditions. So again, it's pretty cost effective. We've seen responses in many of the field crops, some more than others. Your N responsive crops, we've actually seen a little bit better S response because of that N and S relationship. And so I would use that as the other gating factor.
Chris just posted, and I thought I might as well say that there's a new insecticide guide for dry beans for Michigan from MSU, and it's at themichiganbean.com, and it's very nice.
It's an insect guide I should have written. It's got everything, not just
It
insecticides.
It isn't, and I should have I read it.
I should have said that.
Sorry.
So, yep, it's up there for free.